Well, hi, everybody. Speaking of term limited people, I am one, so I am the current chair, but I will be stepping down at the end of the year because I just finished 2 back-to-back terms too. But we have great people in place. I'm not worried, and I'll still be quite involved because I'm retired. What else am I going to do? So I am here to talk about the strategic plan. We do have an executive director, as you might know, Nikki Belmonte. So she very kindly put this presentation together for all of us to give. So I've got some notes here. I'm going to read them. But we are going around the state. The board members are to each chapter to give this same presentation to make sure that our members get the message about this strategic plan and that we give it in a consistent way. And I don't forget to say something because you know how that happens. This is our 26th to 28th strategic plan that we just put together. It comes after a strategic plan that we've already been working on. So we had one for 22 to 25 that is just wrapping up. And in putting this one together, we did a similar process that we did 3 years before, which is we interviewed stakeholders. We interviewed chapter leaders, chapter members. We interviewed our partners and all sorts of people that we felt, even people that we'd like to be partners with, that we're not partners with, because we wanted to see what do people know about us? What do they think about us? And how does that affect what we want to do for the next 3 years? So we were looking at our strengths and weaknesses, and all of that went into what we ultimately came with here. Let's see if this works. I'll just do the space bar. Okay. As we were working through this, we thought about our mission. This is our mission today, to promote the stewardship and conservation of Georgia's native plants and their habitats. But it kind of became clear that we wanted to be more than just somebody who would promote it. So we've actually modified our mission as a result of this work. And we modified it by one word. So I'm going to change the word. Everybody look and see if they can see what it is. So we replace promote with champion because we want to be seen in the state as the champion of the stewardship of our native plants and habitats. We also took a look at our vision, which we had never really created a vision before. So we came up with a vision that is a place, Georgia, where native plants thrive in all landscapes. So not just in the woods, but in our residential landscapes, our business landscapes, our parks, and where people recognize and value. So not just know it, but value the fundamental role that native plants play in the ecosystem. So we want to lead the movement. We want to be seen as the organization that champions native plants. Not that we had a lot of competition, you know, there's not like there's another native plant society, but so of course our mission is more critical than ever. Georgia has over 3,500 species of native plants, and nearly 500 of them are in trouble. We work hand in hand with DNR, who puts together a state wildlife action plan, which does include plants. As you've probably heard over the last few years, there are major declines in butterflies, bumblebee, and bird populations. Without the foundation of native plants, because for those of you who have heard Doug Tallamy, really everything, the building block of nature starts with plants. Plants are the only organism that can take the sun, which doesn't look like it's giving us anything but sunburn, but plants are using that to make food, right? Without the sun, plants would make food. So they're making the first level of food. And then the insects come in and they eat the plants, and then other things eat the insects, like birds, and other things eat birds, like foxes. I think they do, right? Foxes probably eat birds if they can catch them. So really, native plants are the foundation, and that is always a key message we want to get out. It starts with plants and goes up from there. Yet plants receive less than 5% of conservation funding. So, when it comes time to save things, why not save the building block that starts all of it? And of course, as you know, exotic plants still dominate nurseries and retail sales. So this new strategic plan tries to balance our goals, which are education, visibility, and reach, with critical enabling conditions. So we can't really do it if we don't have our chapters, our volunteers, even our staff. Yeah. That's Beasley Knob. Oh. That picture in the back there. Great. Yeah, Nikki likes to pull pictures from all the chapters. So everybody around the state is now seeing your picture. So for the next 3 years, we have 3 strategic priorities. Number 1 is to increase the visibility of our organization through education and communication. And let me just stop for a minute because I know you're taking pictures, which is fine. But you'll be able to, this whole thing is on the website and you're welcome. Anybody can go find it and read it again if you forget or would like to show it to somebody else. So increasing our visibility. It's hard to encourage people to appreciate native plants if they haven't even heard of the Native Plant Society. I can't tell you how many times I talk to people and say, oh yeah, I'm a big volunteer with the Native Plant Society, because I am a volunteer, right? Everybody but Nikki is a volunteer. All of us, all of you, we're all doing the important work. But we want people to know who we are. So just recently, for example, we are working on the state flower change campaign. We also, a couple of us went down and met with the Secretary of Agriculture, Tyler Harper. And we're like, hey, do you know who we are? We want you to know our name. We want you to know when you're making decisions that there are people out there that care about native plants and want them to get used. And he was very supportive, but he did say bring data next time. Our strategic priority number 2 is to strengthen the chapter support and the chapter infrastructure. Without chapters, we would be nothing, right? You guys are the boots on the ground. You're the ones talking to people, putting gardens together, maintaining them, answering questions, making signage. So we recognize that without chapters, we wouldn't even be here. And we want to make sure that chapters are supported, have what they need, and know who they can come to if they have questions or problems. Strategic priority number 3 is basically something that helps support the first 2. We want to expand our internal capacity through staffing and fundraising. This is a 3-year strategic plan. So as I go through it, I'll be talking about things that we're going to do in year 1, for example. We're not immediately hiring a bunch of people. No, you got to ramp up. And we are doing that with improvements in data and systems, partnerships, and inclusivity. All right, priority number 1, increasing the visibility through education and through communication. We want to go beyond the choir. You know, when I'm here talking to you, a lot of you are, yeah, I'm already on board, Alan. You don't have to convince me. So how can we reach those other people? One of the things that we've come up with is to develop some ecoregion plant packs, fulfill a goal of 30 speaking engagements, and establish 3 education partnerships. So we know, for example, that we're always needing to make new partners, right? We have some. Birds Georgia is one of our partners. DNR is one of our partners. We look at the state level, we look for state level partnerships. Master gardeners, the green industry, that's where you're going to see the state board trying to create those relationships that then can be filtered down and benefit the chapters as well. We want to connect people to plants. We want to promote programs through more videos. We understand that not everybody can get to a meeting. So sometimes people need to see things remotely. We want to grow community supported propagation. We've had for many years the Stone Mountain Propagation Project as our main community supported propagation. But this year, we signed an agreement to start a new one down in Byron. That we're very excited about that. And of course, one of our goals over the next 3 years is to host a statewide in-person event. We've been doing a lot of virtual symposiums. We're still planning to do that, but we'd also like to eventually have an in-person event. We know that not everybody can come, but and elevate our public presence. So definitely we are going to be working in this coming year about developing and implementing a marketing and communications plan that can help us pop out at especially younger people and help them know who we are. So priority number 2, strengthening the chapter support and infrastructure. We're going to improve the chapter manual, more governance and communication training, volunteer orientation. We recognize that chapters have challenges not with volunteers, but retaining volunteers and helping them be as productive. And then we'll also be doing some chapter support kits. We currently have the chapter council, so we want to enhance that so that it is more of a peer-driven collaboration program. Right now, it's just a every other month, I think, phone call. And then, of course, host an in-person chapter gathering. Priority number 3 is the support part. So expanding internal capacity through staffing and fundraising. This year, coming up in year 1, we hope to hire a membership and communications coordinator. Nikki's been doing a fantastic job with that, but we need to free her up to do more networking and partnership building. So we're going to have, and then not this year, but in the by 2028, we hope to have a couple of part-time regional program coordinators. We also want to increase the number and diversity of our supporters, hoping to, through our new marketing plan, increase membership by 50% within 3 years. So that's by the end of 2028, and build a long-term fundraising plan, because that's what successful nonprofits have, is robust fundraising. So year 1 milestones, as I said, this marketing and communications plan. We want to establish a statewide speakers bureau. We've kind of had one in the past, but not really put a lot behind it. So we want to improve that. And then I talked about the community supported propagation, and then educational partnerships. We want to expand those so that we have more partners that are helping us deliver effective programs. And then you probably saw that we have a new educational pathway program. So we're just hoping to establish some marketing around that. As I said, the chapter manual, the chapter support kits, and the volunteer handbook, all of those we're hoping to accomplish in 2026. And then you probably saw we have the updated membership tiers that came out. We're going to hire the one membership and communications coordinator, and then long-term fundraising plan. But of course, we are still committed to growing a better landscape in Georgia, building capacity for education and public engagement. But we'll continue our signature programs like plant rescue, habitat restoration, the annual symposium, habitat certification. So we're not getting rid of anything, we're just building on it. We're hoping that us and you will be larger and stronger and better equipped to lead the movement. And so I encourage you all, you can find this, the plan itself, which has much more detail than this presentation, on our website. And if you just hit the homepage, you should be able to see a link to it under the news and announcements. But are there any questions that I could answer about the strategic plan for anybody, or the state board, or anything you want? Did you bring anything to ID? We could do plant ID. But any questions I can answer? All right, thank you very much.
Beep, beep, beep. Thank you, Ellen, for filling us in on that stuff. There was a lot of these interviews that she was talking about. It's like pulling it together and having us sort of try to go through and edit it. This turned out good. Thank you. Okay, now for our main presentation. For those of you who are our guests, we do have a presentation at each one of our meetings. And then field trips in July and August, and maybe field trips other times. But Bill Zeigler has been in the zoological profession for 48 years, a graduate of Indiana State University. He began his career in Miami's Crandon Park Zoo. He remained curator of reptiles for 21 years. During that time, he sat on numerous committees. His full biography is on the flip side of the agenda. I want to just show you, that's a lot of stuff he's been involved with. So he's learned a lot and shared a lot, taught a lot. Retired from the zoo profession in 2022 and currently is vice president of Aquarium and Zoo Resources, Inc. So I don't know if that counts as being truly retired. And I said, and he has made time to present to us. Something that's not on the agenda is that he also works out at the Blairsville, the wellness center here. I know that because we see him there. Okay, is there anything you need for this, or it's all hooked up and ready to go? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I know this is rather weird. I've got a zoologist up here talking to a plant society. But over the course of my profession, I've been involved with habitat restoration. Zoological parks and aquariums are unique in that if you look at organizations like WWF, if you look at nature societies, those that contribute funding and support to conserving wildlife and wildlife habitat, zoos are in the top 5 in terms of funding and staffing for field research and projects. And, you know, in the beginning, back in the 70s when I started, propagation of endangered species was important as a safeguard to extinction. However, we learned very quickly that it's not just about that. I mean, if I have a good population of scimitar horned oryx, which is an endangered arid antelope, but the habitat's gone. What good have I done, right? So zoos began to invest in working with nature conservancies, WWF, as I said, and other organizations to say, hey, we have biologists, we have scientists, we have environmentalists that will work with you to help protect habitat. And not only that, but we have a fantastic base of supporters. My last position was Vice President of Animal Programs at the Chicago Zoological Society in Chicago. It's the second largest zoological membership in the United States outside of Field Zoo and its field research programs. The same with San Diego. So we were able to bring to conservation of habitat as well as species a tremendous amount of support, not only in personnel, but in funding to support those programs. So that's how I kind of got involved with a lot of this. As you said, most of my time had been spent in Miami, so my knowledge of native plants in this area is not that good. We only moved here a couple years ago. And I spent most of my time dealing with bromeliads. In fact, if you looked at my basement right now at the house, it is nothing but bromeliads that I had to bring in for the cold. But I do enjoy native plants. I've tried to look at our house, which is up here on Hoover Road, just a few miles from Brasstown Bald, what I can do with native plants, but also what I can do about backyard conservation. And that's where I really want to be able to talk to you about, because backyard conservation is a holistic approach and how we look at conserving not just native plants, but the environments and the wildlife that the native plants support. And that's extremely important. It also helps things like soil erosion, reducing sediment in waterways. If you look at water management in your yards, a lot of our homes are on hills, right? We have a lot of runoff and spill off. So how do you deal with that? Because almost every valley has a stream here, and every stream runs into a lake. And so all the influences, all the things that can run into that stream or that river end up in that lake, affect the overall health of that lake and the environment around it. So conserving water and improving water quality is part of the holistic approach. And also the idea of backyard conservation helps create and inspire stewardship and an ethics towards that. Now, backyard conservation doesn't mean you have to take up your entire yard. Never have to. And I only show this picture because this one here on the right, this is just this is a water retention garden. You can see the roadway here and the sewer conduit that's down there that collects road. You know, water running off of roads, walkways, and driveways have oil and other influence on it that you don't want to get into the water system. So conservation, you put in a retention area that will absorb runoff before it gets to that storm sewer. So it can be very simple. It doesn't have to take a lot, but it's just a matter of thinking about it and beginning to manage and plan what you do. And it should support a diversity of native plants, obviously, which supports the diversity of native wildlife as much as possible. And you've had talks already this year. I love this organization. We've talked about butterflies and birds, and I love the bumblebee talk that we had a few months ago. I thought that was fantastic. But it's not just about those. It's about all the wildlife, including other insects, other mammals, and birds that get involved. So creating habitat and backyard conservation isn't difficult, and it's not challenging. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot of thought, and it's just what you've got in your backyard. Raking up leaves around a tree, leaving them there for the winter. Piling up sticks up against the property line that you have to the woods and what it provides. This is a dove covey right here that provides habitat. Sometimes it's just a pile of rocks, and you'd be amazed what that attracts and draws into your backyard. So it's not necessarily just about native plants. And sometimes, you know, just letting the yard do its thing, letting it grow. A lot of us have grass in our yards. Now, when I first moved down here, I looked at the grass. I said, gee, how do I get grass growing? And my realtor said, in this area, if it's green, it's grass. That was his comment. So I've kind of let it go. It's like, okay, let's let it fill in where we can. And it's letting it grow taller. And I'll get into yard management in a second. Or obviously, sometimes you want to help it along and you want to beautify the landscape. And that, again, attracts a food-based source. It helps with erosion, water retention. So it's nothing unique. Now, the thing I wanted to point out was in Union County and the 5 surrounding counties, this area that we have, the Blue Ridge, this is extremely rich in wildlife, absolutely extremely rich. Over 305 different species, not counting insects and arachnids or spiders, okay? 14 species of frogs and toads are found in this area. 20 species of salamanders, which is actually how I first started coming down here in 1974, 75. Actually, it was 1972. I did a lot of my work at the university on salamanders. And we spent time down here and over in the Nantahala doing salamander research. And that's what drew me back to this area. I love this area. In fact, the Blue Ridge Mountains and the Smoky Mountains have the highest diversity of salamanders than anywhere in the world. It's just an incredible area. 50 species of freshwater fish, believe it or not. Over 40 species of other reptiles, including snakes, lizards, and turtles. And depending upon the time of year, a number of species of birds, obviously, whether they're migratory birds coming through the area or they're just stationary birds throughout the summer months. 33 species of rodents, shrews, and moles. Most people don't know there's that many in this area. And 27 other species of mammals, from weasels all the way to bears. So it's an extremely rich area, and backyard conservation is going to support all those things. Now, there's a lot of species I'm not going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about skunks or fox or weasels and things that are out there because, quite frankly, although they're important, in your backyard conservation, when you try to attract things, those guys come in and eat whatever you attract. They're out there and they're important, but I won't spend a lot of time talking about those. So, tips for developing your backyard conservation plan, obviously. Set the habitat goals. You always have to have a plan to start with. Everybody knows that. If you just go out there and start doing stuff, it ends up being kind of hodgepodge. But you want to set goals, and you want to look at designing for diversity of habitats to encourage the diversity of species, obviously. Choose native plants. Duh. Why wouldn't you? I mean, that's important. We'll get in more into that later on. And selecting the plants that create a food source for wildlife throughout the entire year, not just in the summer months, but are providing food during the winter months and shelter during the winter months. Managing water sources, as I said, extremely important, especially for this area regarding runoff and erosion. And design wildlife shelters and dens and nesting sites with your planting schemes. Manage invasive species, and importantly, manage the health of the soil too. And we'll get a few ways of doing that without adding a lot of chemicals and things to your area. For those with lawns, obviously, if you fertilize, try to use non-phosphate fertilizers. Set your lawnmowers at high. The taller the grass, the stronger it is. The deeper the root system, the more it's going to help retain soil and water. That's extremely important, as well as your other native plants that you use. Use a mulching mower so that the grass clippings can be returned to the soil, or they're going to help provide organic material. In the fall, mulch the leaves if you can with your lawnmower. I do that a lot. I go out every week in my yard now and just mulch it to break it up and get it down so that it provides more enrichment for the soil. And remove leaves, grass clippings, fertilizers, and things on driveways and walkways where they could get washed down into a storm sewer and from there end up into the aquifer. You want to try and keep them on the natural ground so that they become nutrients and they help retain the soil area and slow down any kind of erosion that you have. Now, water management, as I said, it's extremely important in this area because of the habitat that we live in, right? So, soil erosion. When you're dealing with soil erosion, a lot of times you can create beautiful landscapes, but also opportunities for native plants and habitat for wildlife. This is a before and after. The before shot was actually up much higher a level as far as the picture taken in the photograph. But again, this person had an extreme erosion problem. It was going to get worse, and they had to do something about it. This ends up creating a lot of areas for you to put in native plants as well as the wildlife that you can attract to that area so that you become a richer environment for them. A lot of the creatures that you're going to find in these type of drainage areas, the slimy salamander, this is the Chattahoochee slimy salamander, which is one of our local ones. There's probably about 15 different races of slimy salamanders out there. You've got the three-line salamander. These two are in my yard. In fact, this three-line and the Chattahoochee is one I took photographs of. The seepage salamander, which is this guy over here underneath the slimy salamander. This is another local area another local animal that's found frequently. Pseudotriton ruber, which is the red salamander. Probably won't attract that too much, but it's a possibility, especially if you have an area on your property that stays damp all the time. It's got a lot of moss and rocks growing around it. They like that type of habitat. Down here at the bottom, this is the Ocoee salamander. Again, very native area. But in creating these areas, you also help bring in your spring peepers, the Pseudaquis crucifer, the chorus frog, and the leopard frog. These are all animals that you can attract by creating a seepage area. Now, what I did was the one on the left is my backyard. I'm on a hill too, and I had a lot of erosion problems. So I decided to go ahead and create an area. And at the bottom of that is going to be a water retention area, a pond. It won't always be wet, but by the time I get it planted this spring, it's all going to be covered over, create a habitat. And also along that side created a rock garden. And so this provides a lot of habitat for a number of animals, which I think most of you have seen. One of the first there in the upper left is the broad-headed skink. This is the largest skink in North America. These guys can get up to 9 inches. My favorite animal. They're beautiful animals as adults. When they're younger, they look more like the 5-line skink, which is right next to it. Now, this animal is probably the one you see most often, attracted to your rock gardens, your walls, retention walls, whatever you may have. And a lot of times you see it with a blue tail. The blue-tailed skink, well, it's the 5-line skink, and that's probably just a juvenile that's running around. The coal skink, which is over here on the far right, this is a smaller skink, still very common in this area that you'll get into rock gardens and planted gardens. Beautiful little animal. You get the ringneck snake, which I think all of you are familiar with. This little guy's always around here. Next to it is the decay snake or brown snake. Both of these were in my backyard. In fact, this decay snake, I call it decay, most people here call it the brown snake, is a gravid female. And then you have the cricket frog over here. Now, unique thing about them is they don't require constant water. They're just a nice damp area. So these seepage that you create or water retention area, and I'll talk about rain gardens later on, are great habitats for them. And of course, a lot of them eat insects, and they help keep your gardens from insects that are going to be damaging to the native plants that you have. So there's a good benefit to them. One thing other as far as attractants, and I wanted to identify some stuff. You have Fowler's toad and American toad. Both of these toads, the one on the bottom left and the one next to it, are in this area. Most people just say, oh, it's a toad. But you actually have both. And the way to tell the difference is the Fowler toads, you see those elongated markings on it? Well, they have 2 or 3 warts in each of those. Whereas in the American toad, usually 1 wart and a dark spot, 2 sometimes. Now, the color is just based upon the soil that you're going to find them in, because that color can change. But you've got both. You also have what's called the spadefoot toad. Now this one, if you ever see this toad, you're lucky. It spends about 4 to 5 months underground. Unique thing about the spadefoot toad, it's a voracious eater. I mean, it'll tackle any insect it finds, but also, unlike the other toads and the frogs, they'll breed year-round, which means it could be in the dead of winter. You get a heavy rain, say 2 inches of rain, about 45 degrees, they'll come out and they'll start to breed, and you'll hear them calling. The other unique thing about them is the metamorphosis that occurs between egg, tadpole, and frog is the shortest of all amphibians. I mean, literally in the summer, eggs can hatch in 1 to 2 days, and the tadpoles can begin to morph inside of 5 days. Because all of these guys, including the chorus frog up here, which I'll talk about in a minute, the mountain chorus frog, they like ephemeral ponds. And so your water gardens or your seeps are good ephemeral ponds. And they like those because minnows and fish love to eat frog eggs, toad eggs, things like that. And they don't really care for it. Now, the pickerel and the leopard frog, they don't mind open water. In fact, their eggs aren't as delectable as the others are, and they survive better in a constant stream environment. And I wanted to show these two differences because the leopard frog at the top, when you see it out there, and you can see it out in the middle of a field too, doesn't have to be near a stream. But if you're planting high grass and things, they love that kind of habitat, they'll come in. Their spots are kind of random throughout the entire body. Whereas the pickerel frog, you can see, has basically 2 major lines of spots down its back and a very organized spotting along the side. And that'll be the major differences between them. But a lot of people just see it and go, oh, it's a leopard frog. It may not be. But again, by planting properly, having the right seepage, erosion control for water management, you can attract all these things. Now the chorus frog, the mountain chorus frog, is kind of unique. It occurs in Western Union County, very extreme Western Union County, Fannin County, and the western part of Lumpkin County. It doesn't occur from there eastward, but I wanted to include it because some of us live in those areas. This is a great frog to hear in the spring, like the spring peeper. In fact, very hard to distinguish between the two, but it's a unique species compared to the spring peeper that you found out there. So I did want to include it. Little bit hard to distinguish from a spring peeper, only that cross on its back that you notice. That's why I've got its name Crucifer on the spring peeper. Kind of looks like the same on the chorus frog, but not quite. It's just it's a rarer species to find in this area. Now, how many of you use dead hedges? Using, great. Dead hedges is another good way to look at backyard conservation. It helps control erosion, increases the biodiversity of your backyard because it's going to attract a lot of wildlife, becomes a foundation for plants. Virginia creeper, yellow jasmine, northern dewberry, wild grape, they love these type of areas. And obviously they provide a place for you to put waste in the yard instead of burning. It's not environmentally friendly, right? So that's a good part of it. And the material decomposes, it enriches the soil. Like I said, it helps stabilize hillsides for soil erosion and helps create a more balanced ecosystem. Now, kind of looks ugly, right? Well, that's okay. We'll get into other things that you can do. But they attract things, common stuff, snake-wise and amphibian-wise. King snake, has anyone had king snakes in their yard? Very lucky if you do. They're becoming harder and harder to find, which we really want to know why that's occurring. We're not sure yet. The garter snake, very common. Again, the garter snake is a great snake to have in the area. They eat a lot of insects and things that can cause problems in your garden. The black rat snake over there on the bottom left. Now this one is a black rat in my yard that unfortunately made a meal of a chipmunk. But, you know, that's part of it. And then you have what's called the red-bellied snake, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. Although this is a common snake, rarely will you see this snake. Little's known about its biology, and I'll show you the difference between that and the brown snake that I talked about earlier. Fence lizards, of course, again, another great insect eater to help your plants. And then here's a guy that a lot of people get confused with, like a bullfrog or a larger frog, and it's called Rana sylvatica. This is the wood frog. And the unique thing about this guy is he occurs everywhere here, but they like deciduous forest, they like leaf area, they don't have to be near springs or water. They will go there for reproduction in the spring, but the rest of the time they're out traveling around. And again, great insect eaters to control around your garden where you're planting your plants. And they're very recognizable because of that brown band that occurs behind the eye, post-occipital band, and the ear. No other rana has that marking like that. So good animal to have in your area, and they get attracted to a lot of those things. Now, the decay snake and the red belly snake, I only wanted to do this because I get a lot of calls about, can you identify this snake? Usually it's a decay snake or a brown snake. These things are common. You find them under rocks, logs, things like that. Whereas the red-bellied snake next to it likes damp leaf litter and leaf piles. So if you pile leaves up around a tree where you're planting materials and you let it begin to break down and it stays damp, that's going to be where they are, but they're very secretive. As I said, little is known about their biology, except that between them and the decay snake, they do give live birth. The eggs are hatched inside their body. Babies come out looking like adults. Compared to other colubrids, which make up the king snakes and the rat snakes and things that I talked about. But again, these guys are great for managing your soil because they like a lot of the slugs and things that get in there. If you've had plants where all of a sudden the leaves have disappeared, you know you've gotten slugs and things that have eaten away at your plants. That's what these guys are great for. So increasing their habitat is a benefit to you and how you do your planting scheme. Now, let's go back to dead hedges. You can get very creative with dead hedges. And a lot of people go, oh, you know, a bunch of dead material sitting around. But so also planting around trees, obviously, that's just very common sense. Things like mountain laurel, wild azalea, possum haw, sparkleberry, and others. It's great because they create habitat. And if you have a yard, it also reduces the amount you got to mow, obviously. I'm all for that, especially on the side of a hill. I don't like mowing on the side of a hill. And most of my mowers that I have now, I use just to mulch things with. And I don't spread it out, just let it mulch and enrich the soil more. But that helps. And again, here's where a lot of people get away from the native plants. They like hostas and things. I kind of like hostas, but you know, native plants are going to be best for doing that type of thing. But it's just a very easy way to manage your backyard to bring in wildlife. Let's go woody shrubs on property boundaries. I mean, line your property with these type of things and make sure that they produce food throughout the year. There's a number of species, a variety that you can use during that time. They help create privacy as well as habitat. You know, things like elderberry, sumac, the 3 different sumacs that live in this area, deerberry, high bush blackberry. These are all native plants that make great hedge borders and also help soften your transition if you've got forest around you, because a lot of plants or a lot of animals that you want to attract in love these for protection. It's not just going straight from a deep forest to your yard. Plant around that area to create a berm, create a hiding habitat, nesting habitat for these animals, because a lot of things that move into them are bear, deer, squirrels, turkeys, all kinds of bird species, box turtles, which y'all have seen. By the way, y'all know how to sex a box turtle, right? Does anyone know what sex this box turtle is? The eye. That red iris that you see, that's usually a male. The other way is you don't want to have to pick it up and flip it over, but it has that concave plastron that's there. But if you've got a cute guy like this that's got that bright red eye, that's a male. Females tend to have just a plain brown eye. Not that they're plain, but that's just the eye part that they have. Green snakes are everywhere here, but people never see them. So creating borders and hedge woody shrubs around your property is going to draw in the green snakes. Again, these are insect eaters. They love to chow down on things that are causing you problems with your plants. And then I put these 2 rabbits up here because they're both occur in this area. But most people see a rabbit and they go, oh, cottontail. Chances are it may be a swamp rabbit. And the way to tell the difference is the swamp rabbit tends to have more orange on the rump area here, orange around the eye. You can't really tell in this photograph, but they actually have bigger ears. Some people mistakenly call them jackrabbits, which don't occur in this area at all. But also notice the head on the cottontail is more elongated, kind of a rounded shape, whereas with the swamp rabbit, it's more of a flat, blunt kind of face. But they both live in the area. They're both incredibly attractive to bring into your area, in your yard. They do eat plants, obviously. But, hey, that's part of conservation, right? So let's talk about rain gardens. How many have rain gardens in your yard? Anybody keep a rain garden at all? This is extremely important in this area in terms of those that live on hillsides or those that live on heavy road areas where you get a lot of runoff. Again, because you don't want that runoff causing erosion, and you don't want the runoff off roads and parking lots and things that can carry oil getting into the storm sewer system, which goes where? Right into the river systems, into the lakes. Couple things about them. They obviously prevent damage to stream banks and reduce the risk of local flooding. They help take care of pesticides and debris from lawns, fertilizers. They do prove a valuable habitat for animals, of course. Locate them near impervious surfaces like driveways, patios, carports. If you do a rain garden, keep it at least 10 feet away from your building, whatever building that is. You don't want it near the foundation. And the sites on a 12-degree slope or more, if you want a rain garden, it's going to take a lot of work because you've got to really berm that up, and I don't know that you want to do it. But for around flat areas, especially downspouts on your house, you got leaf gutters. It's a great way to control. Y'all have rain barrels. Rain barrels are great. Well, this is a way to deal with that as well. And again, creating habitat for them. So those that aren't familiar with them, they're actually kind of easy to do. You want to hollow out an area about 24 inches and add in a sandy loam and mulch mix that'll absorb the water slowly. That because of our ground here, Georgia clay, red clay, hard for water to move down through quickly on a heavy rain, so that's why you get a lot of runoff. This helps slow that down. Cover the top with plants. Now, native plants, they don't have to be aquatic plants, and I'll list a few of them on the next slide. Just know that they need to be able to survive in a wet environment, take an overflow, and again, as I said, keep at least 10 feet away from any kind of structure that you don't want to be damaged. You can make them look great. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to deal with rain gardens. I like the one in the upper left. Instead of a rain barrel, he's used a trough. That's really great so that during dry periods, you can use that water to water your gardens with if you want. However, if you use a trough instead of a rain barrel, cover it. Because if you don't, you're going to get algae and you're going to get mosquitoes. And the only way to deal with that if you don't want to cover it is create a habitat. So you want to bring in mosquito-eating minnows and things like that. But if you're going to use it for watering, you're going to drain it anyway. But put a top on it if you use a big, and I like this because it captures a much greater amount of water that you can use later on to water your garden with. And you don't have to run your well, saving electricity, the whole conservation effort. But again, you can make them look nice. You can just make them look like a rock pile if you want, however you want to do it. But rain gardens are a great idea. And as I said, I'm putting in a water retention area at the bottom of mine, which will be a rain garden when I get it planted. That's my bare ground there right now for the winter. But you can create something really pretty if you want. It's great enhancement to the yard. And just know that while you're doing it, you're creating great habitat for a number of different species of animals to work with. So some of the species to consider for these areas, rain gardens, Virginia sweetspire, bottom bush, oaks, panic grass or switchgrass, soft stem bulrushes are great. Red maple love wet environments. Be careful though when you do that because of that root system and what it's going to do, how you're going to control it getting actually into your rain garden and what it's going to do. And of course, dogwood is another one that loves that type of environment. And so planting around one of these can make a really beautiful statement in your yard while you're conserving water, protecting the quality of water, and creating habitat, all in creating backyard conservation. So finally, let's talk about one that a lot of people don't want to talk about, and that's bats. Now, you heard a little bit earlier when we talked about the loss of birds and a lot of insects and things that are dying off quite rapidly, butterflies and birds in particular. But bats, bats have a hard road to hoe. They're the most misunderstood mammals, and yet they are essential to the health of our environment. They do a number of things. Obviously, pest control. Your backyard, mosquitoes, you live near water, or whatever reason you may have. I think most of you know that one bat can eat thousands of insects in a night. So having bats in your area is a great way to control that particular area. They're important pollinators. Now, most of that occurs in the Southwest, where you have desert plants that they pollinate. But I wanted to include it too, because it's important for those areas, and they help define the landscape of those areas by pollination. They also help regenerate forests, because they spread seeds from trees that they roost in, or that they may be, if they're, again, a fruit eating, they may be eating from, and they help improve degraded landscape. They keep ecosystems balanced, obviously, because of this, and their presence is a signal of a healthy environment. They're indicator species. And so having bats in your yard, and most of the time what you'll see around here are big brown and little brown bats that are out there. And that's extremely important, and you should try to encourage them into your area. Now, don't be worried about rabies, okay? You always hear bats and rabies, right? Just constantly. I'm unaware of any rabies issues right now going on in the 6-county area. In fact, I worry more about skunk and fox for rabies, and what's the other one thinking of? Pardon? Well, raccoons, but I'm talking about besides rabies. Distemper. That's a bigger problem than bats will ever be regarding rabies for you. Bats, if left alone in a good environment, are pretty healthy. Providing places for bats benefits countless other species, obviously, but the threats to bats now, which is really severe, is habitat destruction, climate change, invasive species, and worst of all, what's called white nose syndrome. Now, white nose syndrome is a fungus. It was first discovered in New York in 2006, and it is killing hibernating bats, bats that hibernate in caves primarily. This fungus has decimated little browns, the northern long-eared bat, and the tricolor bat, all that live in this area. In fact, declining more than 90% of the total population in the eastern United States since 2006. So providing habitat for them is important in order to maintain that. This thing affects, well, the first sign in any bat that you see in the cave is that white little patch around the nares or the nose that you see. And what it primarily does is it weakens the wings. Helps them, or doesn't help them fly. It makes them weaker so they're tough flying. And it also makes it harder for them to control their body temperature when they hibernate. And so you'll have entire colonies of bats, once this fungus gets into that area, that'll be decimated in 1 year. They just won't make it. And they're extreme. Our bats in this area are all insectivores. And so they're extremely important to our environment and keeping it healthy. And this can be spread not only by the bats themselves, but by us. So you walk into a cave where there's bats that have the white nose syndrome, get it on your feet, go into another habitat, it carries it with us, the fungus grows, the spores grow, and it begins to spread into the bats. So, but going back to the bats here, there are 6 bats in our 6-county area. The little brown bat and the big brown bat are the 2 most common. Now, the differences, so you can tell the difference if you ever want to do that. I don't know if you're interested in that or not. The big brown bat is on the left-hand side. This animal is 4 to 5 inches from the nose to the point of the tail up there, I don't think I have a pointer, do I? No. Is this a pointer? That's not a pointer. It's got a 13 to 12, 14-inch wingspan, and it's got beautiful silky fur on its back, okay? The little brown bat over here, much smaller, about 2.5 inches, 3 inches on the average. The hair on its back is uniform brown. And the other thing about this is if you look at the nose on the big brown bat tends to be pointed, whereas the nose on the little brown bat is blunt and flat. So you won't be able to tell which bat's flying around your backyard. You'll just know it's eating insects, but it could be either one of those or both. These are cave-dwelling animals, except for the big brown. They tend to spend more time out in the wooded areas, but that's why the little brown bat is considered endangered now because of the white nose syndrome. 2 other bats in our area. One of them's absolutely gorgeous, I think. Of course, you got to like bats. And that's the eastern red bat there on the left. Beautiful little guy. In Georgia, it's called a species of concern, primarily because of habitat destruction. These are forest bats. They like to stay in forest areas. They use tree cavities, the shrubbery, big thick shrubbery around your bordered yard that you may plant. They don't mind getting into those and hanging out. They'll hang by 1 foot under leaves. You find them at night. Beautiful little animal. Edges of pastures, things like that. And the other is the hoary bat. Now, the hoary bat is also a species of concern, again, because of habitat. This animal, if you ever see that, is very unique. Big, grizzly brown hair that has white tips all over it. Kind of looks like a, one of the old coats we used to wear with the raccoon fur around it, kind of a look. That's the hoary bat. Again, because they live in dense forest areas, they're not in the same condition as the little brown or the red or the next bat that I'm going to talk about. But they're still a species of concern. So providing habitat in your yard for these guys is extremely important. It's a part of the conservation effort. They help with your plants. Guano is a great fertilizer. If they're in your area, they drop that, as well as eating a lot of the insects, obviously, that can affect your plants. Now, the 2 other bats that you'll seldom see, mainly because they're endangered, or about to be, at least the tricolor bat is the northern long-eared bat. These guys, although they roost in trees and under bark during the summer months, they hibernate in caves. And again, the white nose syndrome is the main issue affecting them. And then the tricolor bat. Now this one you'll confuse with the little brown bat. And the reason is they call it tricolor because in order to identify it, you have to look at the individual hair. The hair is actually 3 different colors. It tends to be a dark brown or gray at the base, turns to a yellowish brown or buff brown in the center, and ends up in a brown tip. I don't advise you try to go grab one and figure out what it is. But it's also the smallest bat in the United States. These things are actually smaller than the little brown, although big adults can be the same size as the little brown. But rarely will you see those now. They are on the endangered species list proposed as of 22, mainly because of government issues. The endangered species list hasn't expanded. I think once that gets resolved, they will get put on the list because they are in dire straits right now. So that's bats. Now, obviously, creating habitat for bats, that's just too easy to do. All kinds of kits. Home Depot, I think, has kits for bat boxes. And so you can place them just about any place you want, except I'll give you some tips on where best to put them. Also, don't expect results in the first year or maybe even the second year. It takes 2 to 3 years, sometimes even 4 years, for a bat colony to start colonizing your bat box. And that's simply because, they're out there doing other things, and it takes a while to find it. You can put a scent attraction on it. I don't advise you doing that, but if you want to do that, that's available in the stores. You can pick that up. Tends to draw the bats to that area if you want to create something a little bit quicker. But bat boxes are out there everywhere. So importantly, when you place your bat box, choose the location that receives about 6 hours of sunlight a day. This is really important for the winter months when it's cold, because it's not like a cave, it's not like inside of a tree. You've created an artificial habitat. And keeping that warm during the winter is much tougher than having a natural tree hollow or something to deal with. Mount the boxes 10 to 15 feet above the ground. I always say 15 to 20 feet, actually, if you can get it up there. Because these things, although you'll see them dive down after insects, they tend to stay up above 15, 20 feet when they're flying around. Locate the box near a water source if you have it. If you've got a retention pond or something, you're worried about mosquitoes, great place for them, pond or a stream. Avoid putting these boxes near property night lights, street lamps, or noisy areas that could deter them, and select a spot with minimal disturbance. So usually, again, your transition areas in your yard that we talked about, good location for bat boxes, because mosquitoes, what do male mosquitoes really utilize? Females like our blood, right? They need that protein. Male mosquitoes are out there taking plant juices. And so the more you plant, the more you can attract male mosquitoes. They'll also come after you, but they attract the female mosquitoes into the area. So positioning them in those areas helps control the mosquitoes that are in your area. And then, of course, try to position them so that the entrance to that area is facing southeast or south, especially for the winter, so it catches that morning sun again. So general tips about backyard conservation. We can kind of go through to tie this up. Identify your water management and erosion issues if you have any. Plan to deal with those in a way that will provide habitat and the ability to use native plants. Your water retention areas near hard surfaces and runoff are surfaces to catch the runoff from the walkways and driveways. Select native plants that do well in wet areas, obviously. For wildlife, learn about the biology. If you want to attract a particular type of wildlife, do your homework. Learn about what it is you're trying to attract and what they need in order for you to create that type of habitat for them. Set your goals and objectives by determining which species you want, obviously. Then inventory your backyard to figure out what you don't have in the area that you may need or that you're lacking. Determine habitat that attracts the wildlife. It also will affect your yard management, so just know that. Now, in most cases with native plants, it's great because it's less to work with, right? They grew up here. They can deal with drought and rains and things that we face. But just know when you're creating some of these other habitats, you do have to manage them, and that'll affect your time and what you do. Obviously, it's important to consider the type of soil and climate area that you're in, the growing conditions that are important to manage the native vegetation that provides the food and cover for the wildlife. Native plants are essential. I keep going over that because native animals evolved with native plants. They know how better to utilize them. So that's why native plants are so important to backyard conservation. Select a variety of plants that provide food throughout the year, as we've said before, and include multiple types of nest areas for birds, bats, and other animals. So vary the habitat throughout your yard if at all possible, and try not to make it just basically plain. It's one thing to put in flowers everywhere, but create more of an environment or habitat by changing those environments around. And quickly, that's it. So if you have questions, speak up because I'm hard of hearing.
Okay. Do you know with bats, can you identify them by the sonar or the sound?
Yes, you can. In fact, there is a, you can go online and actually buy a recorder that identifies the different bat sounds and stand outside and just turn it on and it'll tell you what's out there. We did that when I was at Brookfield Zoo. We wanted to do a bat survey there. And so I had one of my staff that got into it, and she would about 10 times a year walk around the entire 200 acres with her recorder and identify the different bats that were out there moving around. Yeah. Anything? Yes, sir.
I have a pileated woodpecker that visits my yard, feed on wild cherries every summer.
Uh-huh.
Is there anything else I can do to lend him a hand?
Just plant a good variety of plants that will provide berries and things throughout the entire year. Make your own selection based upon your soil needs that you have, where you're located, and what's available to you. They also eat insects. So by planting those things around, you're going to draw insects in too. So they'll do that. I love pileated woodpeckers. They're fantastic birds. Hoary woodpeckers and little downy woodpeckers, the same thing. Now we didn't talk about bird feeders because that's going to be, we've already, I think in the past, we talked about bird feeders. Bird feeders are great, but you need to manage them because they can create a real soil issue where all the seeds drop down and you've got an invasive species going on, you know, unless you're buying a bird seed that says these are all native seeds. So I like bird feeders, but just be careful with them. The other thing that visits bird feeders, of course, are squirrels. And something at night that you may not realize you have, and that's the flying squirrel. Has anyone ever seen flying squirrels in here? You go out at night and you can hear them. You won't know what it is at first, but you hear this. That's a flying squirrel. And they'll come down on your feeders at night. I've got videos of them on my feeders out there sucking down seed all the time. So.
I wanted to add, in addition to the woodpecker recommendations, and in particular for pileated, is to leave dead wood.
Dead woods, yeah.
They will go after dead wood on the ground. It doesn't, they're not just going after standing trees. So if you have trees that fall, if you can leave those logs, that will support them as well.
Dead stags are important, great source of all types of bugs and things.
Right, but even on the ground, they're still good.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else? All right, guys, thank you. Yes, sir.
Rainwater, collecting rainwater.
Yeah.
I mean, I sort of looked in here too. It says off of a shingle roof or asphalt. It's not necessarily because of petroleum or whatever. Is that?
Well, taking it off your gutters and stuff. No, it's not because of oils and things that you would find on driveways and sidewalks and parking lots. It's mainly to control erosion and to move the water away from the foundation of your house and then put it to a place where it's going to be absorbed quickly so that it's utilized in your yard and not, especially on the side of a hill, it's not running down the hill causing a problem. That's what my erosion was. I had a big, when we bought the house, there's a big conduit that collects water from my driveway that's on the side of a hill. And it was just flowing down into a little stream on my property. And it's like, I can't have that happen, you know, because I know there's oil on there. And also you get a big rain and that's a big area of that driveway and it pushes a lot of water. So just the erosion alone was a problem. So that's why I do it, yeah.
Speaking of erosion, can you recommend any certain plants that are best for hillsides or areas where you want to prevent erosion?
Prevent erosion?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the native ferns are great. They like to suck up water. Soft bulrush is fantastic. You know, those are the two primary areas that I try and plant around these wet areas because they'll suck up more water than most of the other. Now the other plants take water too, but not as much. And they love that wet environment if it stays wet as well.